Hello everybody and welcome to another of my JED Talks. Oh, we're in for a treat today. I am joined by Concetta, Antonelli, Lapierre. Did I pronounce that right, Concetta?
Yeah.
Fabulous. My French accent is not up to scratch. I do struggle with French words, but I got that one right, so I'm rather pleased with myself. And I wore gold today, especially for the occasion, but it's looking a bit green. So I do apologise, but it's nice and warm because it's freezing here in the UK. So that's enough about me, but all I will say is today we're getting a love story, which is completely different for my talks. And I'm really looking forward to this because I've heard a little bit about it and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest now. So without any further ado, over to you, Concetta, and very welcome to JED Talks.
Thank you so much for having me today. When I suggested that, raised my hand and said, "Oh, I'd love to do this." I wasn't sure it was going to be this, so I'm happy and excited to share this today.
Yes.
Wow. As I told you, I could probably talk for hours about this. I'll do my best to give the short version. So I am a first generation Italian American, and I come from my father immigrated to the US in 1935 and became a US citizen in 1939. And he came because of the fascist regime in Italy that was growing with Mussolini, and we know the rest after that. So his, like many Italians, they came to the States to find a new life and to live out what was then the American dream. And so that just sort of sets the stage, and it'll be a little bit more important as I go along here. I grew up in the southern United States and spent the better part of my life, at least 35 years, in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was in my 20s, in my mid 20s, I had finally, because this is another thing that goes along with being a first generation in a lot of Italian American homes is, I stayed home longer than perhaps a lot of American young people would have. But finally, yes, got my liberty and I moved out and I was working at a bank, and I had a vacation coming up in September of 1982. So I was going to Cumberland Island, which is a national seashore off the coast of Georgia. And it had been a long time dream of mine. I love the outdoors, and I am such a fan of the beach. I really enjoy going to the beach. So this was a dream come true. I decided now I have my independence. I've moved away from home, and I'm going to go camping, because you could camp on Cumberland Island. It's a natural site where there's wild horses, but there's no cars, and you have to take a ferry to get there.
Yeah.
So I
1982. So that's 30 years ago.
Yeah. Longer, isn't
it? Over 30 years ago. I'm just going to grab my coffee. I'm going to get comfortable as I'm listening.
There you go. And yes, it is. It's just over 30 years. Well, a few years over 30. So I was so excited, got my backpack, borrowed everything I could borrow because I knew I was going to put it on my back and carry it on over there. So I managed to do that, but of course, lessons abound everywhere. And I set up my tent. I was very excited. I was walking around on the beach, and I come back in the evening, and ants had invaded my food because, of course, I left it on the ground. So there's nothing to eat. But thankfully, there were people across from me they were what I would call car campers. Basically, they bought about 5 or 6 coolers that they rolled up, and they had spaghetti and they had everything. So I was saved. But of course, having never really camped before, I was pretty tired the next day because I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. But oh, it just filled me with joy to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So the next day, I spent most of the day on the beach, taking a nap here and there. And as the day went on, I was taking a nap and waiting on the ferry. All of a sudden, I heard a noise. Now, there's nothing on the beach. There's wild horses and turkeys and all of that. All of a sudden, I hear something, and I open my eyes and I look out of the corner of my eye, and I see this group of people coming onto the beach. I think, well, that's odd. The ferry's going to be here in 30 minutes. All of a sudden, I see one person flying, throwing his clothes off of him, and he's headed toward the ocean. And I look, and he has a Speedo on. Now, I guess everyone knows what a Speedo is. It's a tiny bathing suit, men's bathing suit.
Yeah, swimming trunks.
Swimming trunks. So I thought a minute, and I kind of tilted my head, and I went, Remember, it's 1982 in southern Georgia. And I thought, he's either gay or European, because nobody in the South would have been wearing a Speedo. Now, I picked my towel up. Now, again, this is part of it is because of my Italian heritage and wanting to connect with Europe. Moved my towel down next to his clothes. And I can tell you that I'm going, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But sat down. And so he came out of the water. Turns out he could speak English. And turns out he was from France. And he was having his vacation, his 6-week vacations in the US. Now, how did he get there? This is important. He was pen paling with someone who lived in Charleston, South Carolina. She invited him to come. And in the meantime, as he's coming across the ocean, she happens to get engaged. She was a nurse. She happens to get engaged to a doctor. So when he arrives, he finds out that she is now engaged. So he leaves. And at that time, he was hitchhiking. So he made his way down the southern coast, and wound up at a hostel.
So he wasn't supposed to be in that area at all.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
So we talked, and of course the ferry was coming, and we walked back, and I was happening to leave the next day to go back to work. I mean, my vacation was over. And so we struck up a conversation, and we saw each other that evening for a drink. And then I found myself, he told me he was going up through Atlanta on his way to Washington, D.C. And I said, well, hey, I live in Atlanta. Why don't you come see me? I thought, what am I doing? But nonetheless, I said, okay. So he came for a week. I was working, but we managed to go and tour North Georgia and do a few things. And something happened. There was a spark there. So he went back to France. Well, he finished his vacation, and then he went back to France. I continued to work, and we corresponded for 6 months. And with the intention that I was going to go to Europe. Well, this was 1982. In March of 1983, I received a letter from him that said, well, the American I met 2 years ago, it has showed up on my doorstep, and sorry, but I choose her. And so there we are.
Heartbreak. Did it feel like heartbreak?
It did and it didn't. There was this odd thing running in the background that said, don't worry. But yeah, I was sad, and I thought, well, okay. And our lives went on. He married her. I married someone else. And we had continued to send postcards, because one thing we knew is that both of us loved to travel. And so when he traveled in the States, he would send me a postcard. But somewhere around 1986, it just stopped. And life went on, and we were in the process of trying to have children, and life goes on. So I stored his letters and his postcards and went on with my life. In 19, when was Desert Storm? I think it was 92, right in that area, or 1990, somewhere in there. And I remember my then husband, he was in the National Guard, so he got called up to go. And I chose to take that moment to ask the powers that be, what's my purpose on earth? Please be aware that when that happens, be careful what you ask for.
Yes, I know that one.
For the next 10 years, because I also said, I want to help women in transition. That's what I feel like is my purpose. Well, for the next 10 years, I experienced every possible transition except my death.
Okay.
Got a divorce. Both my parents became ill and died. I was laid off from my job. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I think I'll just stop there. That was enough, because all of that meant that I needed to move at some point. So then we'll add that one.
Well, Concetta, that just brings up stuff for me, because I experienced almost all of that as well. My parents are still here, so that is a difference. I got divorced, I changed job, I moved house. All is within 6 months, actually. I mean, it carried on over a period of a number of years, but those three things happened in 6 months. And I look back and I think, how did I cope with that? How did it happen? And how did I get through it? So I can totally relate to, and the autoimmune disease too. So I can understand a bit of what you went through.
Yeah, and it's not always easy to remember that there's something pulling you forward. And that's what of course, we can look back and say, oh, that's what kept me going. There's a lot of different things that keep us going, but that I can say now, there was something pulling me forward. So all of that happened, and then because of all of that, I said, all right, this is a wake-up call for really, what do I want to do? And I decided that I wanted to get my master's degree in psychotherapy, and that took me across the country to Boulder, Colorado. And that move from Atlanta, I have a friend in Boulder who said that Atlanta's like a womb, because there's so many trees there, and of course it's humid and all of that. Well, I moved to what I initially thought of as the moon. It could have been the moon. It was so different. It was dry. It was certainly colder and more snowy than Atlanta, and there weren't as many trees, at least not where I was. So at first I thought, what have I done? I uprooted my entire life and moved to the moon. Might as well have been. But I was there for the purpose of getting my degree. And so after the first year, I experienced a resurgence of my adolescence. And because during meditation, I had seen...
Sorry. Just got to shut that off. Thought I'd got it on silent. Apologies.
And it's not working. Just dance.
To do something quickly. Right.
Dance.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Okay, I was just having a little dance. So I had, as I said, I went back to my adolescence and said, I saw a symbol. And I don't do that when I'm in meditation. I don't see things, but this was one of those days where I saw something and I thought, I'm going to mark this passage, because what had happened is that I'd had a meeting with my ex-husband for the first time since we divorced. And it was an eye opener. He basically said if I had to do it all over again, I'd do the same thing. And it was the last thing I needed to do to kind of cut that cord with him. And so I felt this freedom, and I needed to mark this. And I remember saying to myself, fine, I'm going to marry my career. I'm going to marry myself first. I'm going to be okay as is and go forward. So I saw this symbol and I thought, well, what better way? I'm going to get a tattoo. So I got a tattoo.
Did you?
Yeah. And I'm going to show that in just a minute. So that was at the end of 1999. And I thought, and I was clearing out things as well, because I found my ex-husband's stuff in the basement. And I thought, that's it. Time to get this out of here. And I found Christian's letters. I opened them and I thought, wow, he's quite a writer. And so I decided that I would then, I would write him, because my father was from Sulmona, Italy, and he had asked me to take his ashes back to his hometown in Italy. And so I thought, well, Christian's the only person I ever knew in Europe. What are the chances? His address, looked him up on the internet, and his address had only changed 2 digits.
So Christian is the Speedo man on the beach.
Speedo. Yeah. Yes, I do have a friend that calls him Speedo. So we, so I wrote out a card and I said, basically, here, if you were the guy I met in 1982, here's my information. I'm coming to Europe in 2001. And this is the beginning of 2000. Just wondering if that's you. And so I sealed it, and I went, oh dear, here I go again. No. And I just put it on my desk. I said, oh, I'm not going to send this. So my roommate said, what is that about? And I told her, and she said, huh. And we left it at that. Well, the next thing I knew, she mailed it. So 2 weeks later, I get a long letter from him saying, I have always remembered you fondly, and I'm getting a divorce, and why don't you come this summer to Europe? So we had a conversation, and I basically said, no, I've got to stay here, and heard myself say, why don't you come here? So he did. And once again, I'm like, I'm inviting a total stranger into my home. What? That thing I said was something was pulling me forward.
Yeah.
We were both very clear at the beginning. Nope, friends, not going to get involved. We both just decided no more relationships. Oh, famous last words. So I continued to do my internship. He traveled around some, and then we traveled together. And one night, over pizza and a glass of red wine, whatever that pause button we each had hit in 1983, it appears that we took our finger off the pause, and there we were.
And you pressed play.
That's exactly what we did, and there we were, 2 silly people. When I say silly, I just mean that beginning infatuation, that love where no one can do anything wrong, and that kind of energy. And so that was the beginning. And so here we are. I've got to graduate, and he's going back to France. And so there we were. We carried on a long distance relationship until 2006. And in the meantime, let me show you. I'm going to show you a picture of us. I don't even know what possessed me, other than I love taking pictures. But I actually took a picture of us on the day we met in 1982. Let's see if I can be screen savvy here. Let me do this.
There it is.
And there we are.
Wow. 1982. So it's nearly 40 years ago,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it is.
Yeah.
So there we are. And then let's see, let me go back. This is where my father's hometown is, in Italy. It's in the Abruzzo region. So it's probably about 160 miles east of Rome, and then a little bit nearer to the Adriatic Sea.
Ah,
Now,
yeah, that's Rome.
so this is significant. So when I came to, I'll stop sharing now. When I came to, oh dear, I'm just going all over the place here. How do I stop sharing? There we go. So in 2001, I fulfilled my dream and I came to Europe to visit Christian. And we subsequently were traveling around France. And of course, he went with me to take my father's ashes back to Sulmona. So, as I said, this is in the Abruzzo region. And I'm going to, so we are visiting in his hometown for 3 days. And when I initially, we were walking around the town, I saw this piece of jewelry that caught my eye. And it's called a presentosa. Now, I didn't know what this was until the last day we were there, but I kept seeing it everywhere and it just kept catching my eye. And on the last day, I finally said, I have to find out what this is because I can't stop looking at it. And I went to the tourist office and I found the information about it. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Oh, sorry. We'll do this again. All right. So this is the piece of jewelry. And it was only made in this region.
Wow.
Made in the 60s.
That's
It was
very
made in the 60s.
intricate, isn't it?
Yes. Made in the 1600s for the girls were always covered up. And when they would go out at night to have their walk, no one could tell if they were single or married. So this piece of jewelry was created so that the girl who had one heart in the center was single. And so the young men could see who was available. And then the one that had two hearts on it meant that she was married. And this was always presented by the mother-in-law to the young woman on their wedding day.
Oh, a lovely tradition.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
So I'm reading along and I'm looking at this and I'm going, why does this look so familiar? Why is this? And I'll show you why it looks so familiar. This is my tattoo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Similar to the jewelry. So that the two hearts in it in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what I saw that day in meditation. And I had no knowledge of the presentosa.
Yeah.
So here I'm standing in the
Oh,
only region that they make this, where my father was born, and I'm standing there with Christian, and he buys me my presentosa. So I now have that piece of jewelry. So this is what I'm telling you about how something was pulling me forward.
yes. Yeah.
And that particular day, I felt so humble there in the sense of being reminded yet again
Mm.
We just don't ever know. And as I've said, that we I use the word soulmate. I'm convinced. How could I not be convinced that he's my soulmate? But in the sense that he's helping me learn and grow. I'm not saying that we're still in that infatuated state that we were in 2000.
Mm.
But there are moments, and certainly I wouldn't trade this where we are now, because I moved here in 2006.
Mm.
And to go back, just as I said, moving from Atlanta to Boulder was like moving to the moon. But that move is what prepared me to move here.
Yeah.
I'm not certain I would have been able to land on my feet as well as I did. I'm not saying it was easy, but I can tell you, I don't regret the move at all. At all. There have been a lot of hills and valleys living here. But as I look back in my life, how this began to get set up, full
Mm.
circle,
Mm.
way, I even get chills as I say that right now, is that
Yeah.
um,
I just love all the synchronicities you've described there that pull all your story together, and it's how it's all interwoven, and you know, and the tattoo. Uh,
oh my
oh,
goodness, I
just
still
yeah, incredible. So thank
and
you so much for sharing. Oh, carry on. What we can.
I just wanted to show one more thing. We were able to go back um, to Cumberland Island. Oh, it's moving so slow. In 2011, my sister arranged for us to go. And there we are on the same porch.
Wow. Yeah, same picture. And how many years later was that? That must have been 30 years later.
Well, let's see. It was just shy of 30, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, you got an amazing story there.
So
So it's beautiful.
anyway, that's so thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. But
Oh,
it
you're
is
welcome.
it's what also pulls me through on those days when we have our soulmates in front of us and feeling so challenged. It's just to remember there's something pulling us through.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, absolutely. And so now you're in France, you're near Bordeaux, which is a beautiful part of the world. I love Bordeaux and that area of France, that region. And yeah, I want to get back there again. So I should be coming to visit.
oh, I hope so. That would
Oh,
be
absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When I next go to France, and I've got several friends in France now because I did a lot of pet sitting there. So I should do a little tour and
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
so thank you so much, Concetta, for joining us today and sharing your what is a beautiful love story.
Thank you.
And you should write a book on it, I think.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm in the process of doing that.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, do let
So,
us let us know when it's ready, and
thank you.
yeah,
Yes, I will.
let everybody know. So if you've enjoyed your talk, Jed talk today with me and Concetta, then please join us for the next one. It will be coming along very soon. In the meantime, lots of love, big love to the world. God, do we need it right now? So a love story has warmed our hearts, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.